In the early morning hours of Sunday morning, 7 February, I experienced a heart attack. I immediately went to the casualties at Rose Acres Primrose and was stabilized during the day and then transferred to Steve Biko Academic Hospital at 9 p.m. Sunday evening.
As you can see, it's linked directly to our emergency unit. It's actually an extension of, if you look there, it's written major incident management triage area. So it's a designated area to manage disasters. So what you see happening running in the social media, it was because it was a scenario where it was a disaster, although a mini disaster.
On arrival at 10 p.m. in the evening, I handed the letter addressed by Dr. Kennedy, the Rose Acres physician, to Dr. Patel, which was contacted by Dr. Kennedy to arrange my transfer to Steve Biko. Blood tests that clearly confirmed that I had suffered a heart attack and was in danger of suffering another heart attack was handed to him upon my arrival. In spite of this, I was asked to report to the COVID tents outside Steve Biko's hospital's casualty area. I was told people would attend to me but first had to undergo a COVID-19 test before I could be admitted. The fact that I had heart attack symptoms like shortness of breath was a problem. The hospital policy states clearly that everyone with shortness of breath, no matter the reason, must undergo a COVID-19 test. This, the official Steve Biko hospital policy, places vulnerable heart attack patients in close proximity to COVID-19 infected patients. It places heart patients in direct mortal danger. It was a cold evening and I was left outside the COVID-19 tents waiting on a plastic chair to be admitted. I waited for 4 hours until 2 a.m. Saturday morning before I was attended to. My blood pressure was only taken 4 hours after reporting to casualties at Steve Biko Hospital. It took another hour before I was admitted to a tent and given a bed, and my blood pressure was taken for the first time. I was told there was no blankets and linen was non-existent. I was placed within 2 meters of an elderly lady which was sitting upright on a bed and she was breathing heavily into a ventilator. I sat and watched as she died from COVID-19. By 6 o'clock, Monday morning, on the left-hand side of my bed, as she died, was a 16-year-old that had heart problems. On my right-hand side, there was a 60-year-old male that had serious heart failure. The fact that none of us were infected by COVID-19 is a miracle, and definitely not due to the expert medical care at Steve Biko. From there, I was moved to casualties ward where I spent another horrific night in close proximity to other patients with very little regard for social distancing and wearing masks. Car accident patients and other emergencies filled the ward and the beds kept moving closer to each other as the night progressed. A patient that was paralyzed from the waist down ended up less than 500 millimeters from my bed. I only received a Disprin-like blood thinner on a drip as stabilization for my heart and saw the cardiologist for the first time on the Tuesday afternoon and was told they will arrange for me to be moved to a ward. I was moved to ward 6.4 the next morning. The nursing care was excellent, but once again I received only vitamin C as a drip as they could not locate the right medicine for my heart. But I was monitored regularly. I started suffering from nicotine withdrawal. This placed a great deal of strain on my heart. I wanted to go for a smoke, but was told that there was nowhere in the hospital or hospital grounds to go for a smoke. I asked other smokers and was informed that there was a smoking zone for hospital employees on level 2. I went there for a smoke, and as I got there, I was informed by security that no patients could smoke there, only employees could. I was aggressively harassed by 2 security guards while finishing my smoke. It seems only employees retain their constitutional right to bodily integrity. Patients lose theirs at admission. I was informed by other smokers to go to level 10, the roof area, to smoke. It was an unofficial smoking area. I went to level 10 and realized immediately that the ventilation of the hospital was fatally flawed. It was drawing air from the surrounding crowded suburban area and surrounding parking lots straight into the main ventilation systems of the hospital. It is a pandemic breeding ground. It is that simple. This fact makes nonsense of the emergency, fever, tent, effort. In the meantime, I was informed by hospital nurses that I cannot wear any of my own pajamas, t-shirts or shorts, but that it was compulsory to wear hospital pajamas provided, which resembles prison garb very closely. I was informed that I could not shower as the showers were non-functional. I did not have a shower or bath since being admitted in the tents. The experience was dehumanizing and degrading, to say the least, but it seems that you lose your second constitutional right as a patient on admittance, that being the right to human dignity. I was also informed that no books or laptops would be allowed and that I had to look after my mobile device very carefully as theft is rife. It seems that the security has their hands full with smokers and have no time for anything else. You cannot receive visitations from any member of your family under any circumstances. It seems you altogether lose the freedom of association as the third constitutional right, usurped single-handedly by Steve Biko Hospital on admission. In my travels around the hospital, it was apparent that the lifts were in hazardous condition. 2 of the 4 lifts I used was out of commission, forcing people to squeeze into working lifts like sardines. The floor section buttons often didn't work, and sick people were necessitated to use the stairs to get where they wanted to be. This made a joke of the pandemic fever tent philosophy. I was informed by the cardio teams that the angiogram would be performed on Wednesday morning, and I should stop drinking fluid and stop my food intake from 10 that night. This never transpired, and I never saw another member of the cardio medical team until Thursday afternoon. On Thursday at noon, I decided to book myself out of the Steve Biko prison of incompetence and informed the nurses of my intention to do so. I was requested to wait for the cardio member to speak to me, and this member asked me to sign a document that I refused to accept medical treatment. I declined to do so, and instead stated that you cannot refuse medical services not offered to you. I asked the doctor, which happened to be a black lady, to tell me the story of Steve Biko and what he stood for. She stated she did not know. I asked her to educate herself so that she could understand that human dignity and freedom was principles worth dying for. I informed her I will take my risks and will go home to exercise my right to freedom of speech, and will make a video that will inform people with associated lung and heart disease not to book into Steve Biko if they value their life. That right of freedom of speech, dear doctor, has now been exercised. Management of Steve Biko, you work for us, the people. We don't pay taxes to be dehumanized, to a mere patient number, pandemic or no pandemic. There is no medical reason to declare common human decency dead, dear doctors. Rest in peace, Steve Biko. If you spent a week with me in the hospital named after you, you will turn in your grave. And most probably be turning in the company of, I suspect, quite a few previous Steve Biko hospital heart patients. People that should have been here, able to watch this video. Good people have died for our constitutional rights. Don't give it away cheaply. It is worth dying for.